No matter how hard he tries to distance himself, J.D. Vance is part of the Epstein administration. This cover-up cannot be treated as something driven only by Donald Trump, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, or Todd Blanche. It is an administration-wide effort involving people who are all impacted and who should all face criminal liability for obstruction of justice and the coordinated cover-up that absolutely includes J.D. Vance. More than almost anyone else, he understands just how exposed he is, which is why he has tried to keep his distance. But Thomas Massie isn't allowing that. His recent post is exactly what Vance fears most. It highlights how implicated he is, signals real legal danger, and serves as a warning shot for what lies ahead for Vance, especially as the 2028 Republican primary approaches. And that concern, more than anything else, is what drives him.
And by the way, I think historically when we look back at the Epstein scandal, it's going to be bigger than Watergate. And it's going to be, by the way, the president didn't go to jail, the attorney general did. It's going to be bigger than Iran-Contra. And here's why. It spans 4 administrations. It's deeper than any political thing on the surface. And so I think in terms of the number of people who are affected, I mean, how many people were affected by Iran-Contra, okay, or Watergate? I mean, specifically in that instance. Obviously, everybody's affected when there's a lack of transparency and bad or fraudulent things happening. But I mean, directly affected or implicated, that was a finite group of people in both of those. Here we have what seems to be almost an infinite number of people involved with Jeffrey Epstein. At least we don't even know yet how many there were in the criminal enterprise or the seedy part of it. And it's like that Spider-Man meme where there's 6 Spider-Men, they all look the same and they're pointing at each other. You've got all these billionaires pointing at each other. You're in the Epstein. No, you're in the Epstein. No, you are in the Epstein. It's you who is in the Epstein files. And you're the one who went to the island. I didn't go to the island. Anyways, there's sort of this circular finger pointing that's going on. But I think it's a scandal that is longer in time, involved multiple administrations, and that's why we have to get to the bottom of it.
No one in this administration should be allowed to escape responsibility for participating in this cover-up. From the top officials to those working inside the DOJ, anyone who helped shield Donald Trump and his inner circle from scrutiny shares in that accountability. That includes J.D. Vance, who has openly admitted in the past that he's willing to shape narratives and even spread misinformation if it serves his political goals. He said as much on the campaign trail when defending false claims about pets being eaten in Springfield, Ohio, rhetoric tied directly to Trump's messaging at the time. Now, as the Epstein controversy continues to unfold, Vance has tried to keep his distance, but when pressed on it, his response revealed 2 things. First, that he is far more entangled in this than he'd like to admit, and second, that he is an ineffective and unconvincing messenger when forced to defend it. And that sets the stage for the post from Thomas Massie that escalated the situation even further.
Well, I mean, I've been pretty occupied the last couple of days. I haven't seen Howard getting calls to resign. We'll follow the story a little bit more closely as I get on the plane. But, you know, fundamentally, I think the Epstein files, what they reveal is certainly you had a lot of very wealthy and powerful people who were involved in some very disgusting behavior. But I do find it's interesting that the congressional Democrats are so focused on attacking the President of the United States. Who's the president who actually authorized the release of these files? It was Donald Trump. And they you know, what really bothers me about this is that they take completely unsubstantiated attacks against the president, some of which are like completely facially absurd. I mean, the most absurd claim that I saw is that Donald Trump was engaged in sex trafficking when he was a teenage boy, meaning when the president was himself a teenager. Some of this stuff you just have to say, obviously that's ridiculous.
J.D. Vance is making the same mistake we often see from Donald Trump. On one hand, he claims he doesn't know much about the Epstein files and questions why anyone is still talking about them. On the other hand, he insists Trump disliked Jeffrey Epstein, supposedly reported him, and had nothing to hide. But that argument collapses under its own weight. If Trump truly acted responsibly, why resist full transparency? Why block the release of information that would supposedly clear him? So far, what has surfaced publicly has only intensified scrutiny, not eased it. Even messaging from figures like Caroline Leavitt has been hedged, referring to an alleged call Trump may have made to authorities about Epstein. Language that suggests uncertainty about which narrative best serves them. The problem is consistency. Trump maintained contact with Epstein after serious allegations were already known, and that timeline raises questions they still haven't convincingly answered. Vance appears caught between defending Trump and distancing himself, and that contradiction is exactly what Thomas Massie highlighted in his post. A move that not only complicates Vance's future in a Republican primary, but also amplifies the broader scrutiny surrounding this entire controversy. So if you remember back in 2021 during the Biden administration, J.D. Vance shared a story about Jeffrey Epstein and tweeted, "Remember when we learned that our wealthiest and most powerful people were connected to a guy who ran a literal child sex trafficking ring, and then that guy died mysteriously in a jail, and now we just don't talk about it?" Thomas Massie responded, "Some of us never forgot J.D. Back in 2021, when J.D. Vance was launching his elected political career and running for Senate, his campaign was fueled by one of the largest single donations ever given to a Senate race, a staggering $15 million. That money came from Peter Thiel, a figure whose past connections raised serious questions. Thiel had extensive contact with Jeffrey Epstein, including emails, dinners, and shared discussions about destabilizing governments for financial gain. These were not casual associations, but part of a worldview centered on exploiting global instability to grow wealth and power. Today, Thiel appears to be benefiting enormously through government contracts and surveillance technology tied to Palantir, while Vance has gone conspicuously silent on Epstein, despite once eagerly raising the issue when it was politically convenient during the Biden years. That silence matters. Vance doesn't need to work at the DOJ to be implicated. Participation in deflection and obstruction is enough. This is not just a Trump problem. It is an administration-wide cover-up, and Vance is part of it. But what may scare him even more is the political fallout. Vance cares about one thing above all else: the 2028 Republican primary. And now, on the very issue he cannot defend himself on, he's being outflanked by Thomas Massie, who is positioning himself as the anti-Epstein class candidate. That line of attack directly implicates Vance and could dominate the primary, leaving him with nowhere to run. Vance is now trapped, trying to distance himself from Epstein while also avoiding the topic entirely. Even people in his own media circle, like Tim Dillon, have acknowledged that Vance previously argued the full Epstein files should be released, a position he has since abandoned. That kind of double game becomes impossible when Massie keeps reminding voters who was complicit and who wasn't. This is why the administration is scrambling to muddy the waters and shift attention elsewhere. But as voices like Ro Khanna have laid out, distraction only works if people stop paying attention. And that is exactly what many are now refusing to do.
Carson Carney, you have now been officially informed that you have 100% of the Epstein files.
Well, that's just wrong. And it's not just Thomas Massie and I who are now calling it out, not just Marjorie Taylor Greene who's calling it out. People like Kim Burchett, people like Nancy Mace are saying this is just not transparent. Even Senator Kennedy is saying this is not transparent. And the reality is they're muddying the water. I mean, instead of focusing on people like Lutnick, people like the ambassador in Turkey, people like the Stephen Bannon, who had actual correspondence or relationships with Epstein, they're just putting out every public figure. And not only is that letting off people who actually may have been involved in illegal or immoral behavior, but it's also breeding such cynicism because, as your monologue showed, there are people like President Obama who didn't get anywhere close to this, who are decent, who are moral, who believe in the rule of law and America's character. And for them to try to conflate everyone is a terrible disservice to democracy.
What are your next steps?
Well, we're contemplating several things. Nancy Mace has actually offered an idea of whether we have to have another legislative approach in Congress to clarify further the law. And remember, Lawrence, the first bill passed 427 to 1 and 100 to 0 in the Senate. So there are veto-proof majorities that we could have. There are survivors who could bring a case before Judge Engelmeyer and Judge Berman in the Southern District of New York. Thomas Massie or I may bring that case. We, as you recall, asked for a special master for this purpose. Now, Judge Engelmeyer ruled that we needed to actually bring a motion, an actual case, and we're contemplating that.
The Epstein files, unless they're destroyed by this administration, and Donald Trump gives pardons to the people who destroy them, will be there when a Democrat wins the White House next time, presumably in the next presidential election, and a new attorney general. What do you anticipate they might be doing in the Justice Department in anticipation of someday having to hand over to a Democratic attorney general the Epstein files?
I believe they're trying to cover up as much as they can of people close to the president or in his network. I mean, we know that the FBI already scrubbed these files with redactions, and we don't know where the existing files are. But I don't want to wait 3 years. I mean, you have France saying that they're going to prosecute anyone who's involved. New Mexico just today said they want to open up an investigation into the ranch. You have other nations that are holding their government leaders accountable and wanting to investigate. And only in the United States of America is our DOJ saying we're done, we want to move on, no investigation, no prosecutions. And then you have a Commerce Secretary who's all over the files, lied about it, and no consequence. This is an affront to survivors, and it is questioning our morality as a nation.
The Epstein cover-up isn't confined to the DOJ. It extends into right-wing media as well. You can already hear certain pundits referring to Epstein's victims as alleged or so-called victims, language designed to undermine their credibility and weaken their claims before justice can even be pursued. Others are joking about it, trivializing it, or pushing the narrative that everyone was involved, so no one is responsible, all in an effort to blur the facts and exhaust the public. That strategy is deliberate. Muddy the waters, confuse the audience, and erode accountability. We cannot allow that to succeed. We won't allow it to go unchallenged on this show. If you want to support that effort, hit subscribe, leave a like on the video, and if you made it to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I will see you soon.